Welcome students to this third video of the fifth class. We are going to speak during this video about organizational structures, okay? How companies are structured, what are the traditional hierarchy, and other new forms of management that are having different degrees of acceptance among companies. We are going to speak about different ways of organizing a company. As you may see, we are going to see 5 different ways of organizational structures that already exist in some companies, or some of them are starting to exist in startups or other types of companies. Maybe some of them are more options for the future work. As you see, we are going to focus on the traditional hierarchy, the flatter organization, flat companies, flatteries, and holacratic organizations. We are going to start by the most traditional organizational structure, which is the traditional hierarchy. This model was adopted by the military as a way to show a chain of command, and of course we all have seen this way of structure this traditional hierarchy in a lot of companies, and even nowadays we continue seeing this chain of command and this traditional hierarchy. I would say that it makes sense, for example, in linear work where no brain power is required, but it's not the best option in companies in which the ideas or the brain power is very important. Okay, I would say that bureaucracy and well-defined layers are typical from this model, and companies are trying to figure out alternatives to the hierarchy, looking to flatten out their structure. So even though it's still the most typical organizational structure in companies, it is true that a lot of companies are seeking to adapt and are seeking to have more flattened out structures. Okay, I would say that this traditional hierarchy is maybe the best one for very small companies, but it's not the best one for medium and large companies in which the brain power is required. Here we can see an example of an organizational structure based on the traditional hierarchy. This is a Big Four, and this is the different levels in which you are being promoted in your career, staff, senior manager, partner, depending on your evaluations and your performance. Maybe in 15 years or 20 years you may become a partner, and the senior managers depends on the partner, the manager depends on the senior manager, so it's a, maybe we will say, sample of the traditional hierarchy. Another organizational structure is flatter organization. We can say that a flatter structure seeks to open up the lines of communication and collaboration. As you can see in the image, there are several people on the top structure. There are few layers that arrows point both ways. So if we could find a lot of different layers in the traditional hierarchy, in the flatter organizations we can see maybe 2 or 3 or 4 layers, but no more. I would say that it's the ideal structure for larger organizations. It's the most practical, scalable and logical approach to deploy across an entire company. And I would say that this is the model that most large and medium-sized organizations around the world are moving towards. It is true that a lot of companies desire to adopt a flatter organizations, but at the end they are still moving through a hierarchy model. Okay, they still have a CEO that have the last word of a lot of topics, but they are trying to move through the flatter organizations model. And this model needs a strong focus on communication and collaboration. Here you can see another organizational structure called flat organizations. It's more usual in smaller and medium companies than in big organizations. And the main characteristic is that there are usually no job titles, no seniority, managers or executives, and in principle, everyone is seen as equal. Oftentimes are called or referred as self-managed organizations, and usually the employees can see what projects are being worked on, and they can choose in which project they decide to work. The fourth organizational structure we can see as the flat cherries. We could say that is located in between hierarchies and flat organizations, and as you can see in the image, companies with this type of structure could be more dynamic, and this type of structure can work with any type of company, large or small. It is said that usually flat cherries structure is more a temporary structure and is not very practical in the long term. And finally, we have the holocratic organizations, also known as bossless companies. I've never seen any company like this. I just have read a couple of examples, or 3 or 4 examples. There are quite a few organizations that have been experimenting with this model. The goal is to allow distributing the decision making across all the employees, and there is still some structure and hierarchy, but it's not based on people as much as is on circles. And I would say that it's more viable for smaller and medium-sized organizations. We are going to watch a 1 or 2 minutes video of Steve Jobs speaking about the organizational structure on Apple, and then you can think on which one model do you think the Apple structure fits best.
One of the keys to Apple is Apple's an incredibly collaborative company. And so, you know how many committees we have at Apple?
No.
0. We have no committees.
No committees.
We are organized like a startup. One person's in charge of iPhone OS software. One person's in charge of Mac hardware. One person's in charge of iPhone hardware engineering. Another person's in charge of worldwide marketing. Another person's in charge of operations. We're organized like a startup. We're the biggest startup on the planet. And we all meet for 3 hours once a week, and we talk about everything we're doing, the whole business. And there's tremendous teamwork at the top of the company, which filters down to tremendous teamwork throughout the company. And teamwork is dependent on trusting the other folks to come through with their part without watching them all the time, but trusting that they're going to come through with their parts. And that's what we do really well. And we're great at figuring out how to divide things up into these great teams that we have and all work on the same thing, touch bases frequently, and bring it all together into a product. We do that really well. And so what I do all day is meet with teams of people and work on ideas and solve problems to make new products, to make new marketing programs, whatever it is.
And are people willing to tell you you're wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, other than snarky journalists. I mean, people that work for you.
Oh, yeah. No, we have wonderful arguments.
And do you win them all? Or?
Oh, no, I wish I did. No, see, you can't. If you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions, and you have to be run by ideas, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win.
So,
otherwise, good people don't stay.
But you must be more than a facilitator who runs meetings. You obviously contribute your own ideas.
I contribute ideas, sure. Well, why would I be there if I didn't?
I'm going to give you a couple of tips for positive management. Of course, there are general tips. It's gonna depend on the company sector. It's gonna depend on the team members, the age, the gender, the characters, the mood. It's gonna depend on the manager. But generally speaking, we could say that those are very useful tips for managing. Okay. First of all, maybe the most important one is to provide feedback. You have to provide both positive and negative feedback to your employees, to your team. It's very important that you be clear about the negative points, and as well it's very important that you point out positive things that they are doing. Another tip is to not micromanage. There are a lot of managers who are 100% supervising the task of their team, and that's not a good way of managing people. When you manage someone, when you have a team, you have to learn how to delegate and how to trust. Of course, you can review their work, you can supervise it, but you have to be careful and give them some degree of freedom so that they can as well trust you. Okay, so do not micromanage. Another tip is to maintain good communication. This is very important. You have to be aware that in teams, communication shall flows through the bottom to the top, and it's very important that do not duplicate tasks, and all members of the team have to be in constant contact with others so that there are a complete communication. Another tip is to build positive working relationships. I am pretty aware that sometimes it's not easy, but you have to be a little, I would say, hypocrite, or try to maintain good working relationships despite the fact that you are not the friend of the employee or your peer. Okay, so it's very important to, if it's possible, of course, build positive working relationships, because at the end you are going to spend a lot of hours with such team, and it's very important to try to at least be empathic with those team members. And here you have acknowledge good work. It's very important to point out what the team members are doing well and what your employees are doing well, and it's very important this degree of recognition. Moreover, you have to be real. You have to be aware of the limitations of your team members, of the burden of work. You have to be aware of the deadlines, be realistic with deadlines. You have to be decisive. As manager, you are going to have to make the snap decisions, a lot of snap decisions, but this is a very important feature of a good manager, to be decisive. You have to know how to delegate jobs to the right people. For that reason, you have to know very well to your team members so that you can see which project will fit the most to which team member. Okay, you have to manage conflict. A manager is constantly managing with conflict among peers, between peers and the manager, and it's very important that you know how to manage conflict. And finally, set a good example. Of course, you cannot give orders if you are not doing the job you said. So it's very important that you set a good example for your team members. We are gonna finish these 10 or 12 tips about the positive management by saying a couple of quotes and a couple of more tips. The first one will be, for example, a very, very important tip, which is listening, listening, and listening. It's very important that you, as a manager, know how to listen to your team. People management shall start always with listening, and listening shall start before you think it does. So it's very important that you listen to your team, and not only hear. You have to listen and understand what they are trying to tell you and put it into practice. But it is very important that you listen constantly your team members. Another famous quote is that if you want to kill an idea in the world, get a committee working on it. Okay, it's by Charles Kettering. Well, I would say that if you really want an idea, you have to decide to appoint one concrete people and put a deadline, but you cannot delegate in a committee because it's gonna be very difficult to coordinate such people, and it would be better if you design one leader of such a group than gets the task for a general committee. There is a famous quote that states that a goal without deadline is just a dream. Well, I would say that a goal without a deadline and a people in charge, a person in charge, okay? So when you within a company as a manager have an idea, have a project, have a task, you cannot just say it loud or say it to a group of people. You shall design one leader, one people in charge, and you shall state a deadline. Maybe you could provide an extension when the time arrives, but it's very important that you fix a deadline because otherwise our day-to-day work is gonna not allowing such people to develop the task, and you have to put a deadline and very important to put someone in charge of such idea or project. Finally, we are going to end these management tips by saying that it's very important to assign clear tasks to a specific team member. So it's very important that after a meeting or after speak with every team member, every employee, you ask them if they have understood clearly the task. And it's very important that after all meetings you have, or even in emails you send with your team members, you assign clear tasks to a specific team member, because otherwise it will be very difficult to know who has to do what. And that's all. Thank you very much. This is the end of this third video of the fifth class, and we are gonna finish this fifth class with the last video about the family business. If you have any query or any doubt, please contact me, and thank you very much again, students.